Hey everyone, it's T. So every once in a while I'll see a photo set on Tumblr or Twitter of a Sailor Moon character in official art wearing outfits inspired by high fashion shows. It was very obvious that Naoko Takeuchi was inspired by designers of the 80s and 90s, and she kind of showed her appreciation for these designs by putting her characters in them in the manga and art books mostly. And I thought it might be fun to kind of look at this from a modern lens and see if there were any recent shows or designers that might look good in this style. Frankly, I think this concept is pretty open. Like, as an artist, you could just say, I want to see Sailor Moon wearing a punk-inspired outfit, and you can do that. Because most work is up to an artist's interpretation. But for this, I wanted to try and stay along the same lines as the art books and the manga. I'll try and give a brief overview of the designers that Naoko Takeuchi has used in the past. This isn't at all comprehensive, and I'm sure I will miss something. But like I said, these comparisons appear pretty frequently online, so if you're a fan of Sailor Moon, you've probably seen them before. I feel like the three photos that I see the most often are Sailor Pluto in the Karl Lagerfeld Chanel dress, Sailor Saturn in the Thierry Mugler dress, and of course Princess Serenity's Grecian style dress, which I believe is Dior. Others I see talked about often are the villains' dresses like Christian Lacroix dress, and this dress by Thierry Mugler. So in looking for modern day inspiration, I wanted to look at designers that were along the same vibe. I'm not sure if this is what Naoko Takeuchi would like today, but I will do my best. So I was looking for something in a similar vein to the Karl Lagerfeld Chanel dress that Sailor Pluto wears. And I was drawn to these dresses from Christian Siriano's 2022 Spring-Summer collection. I really like the chest detailing, and I feel like it goes along with the way Takeuchi kind of draws her characters, if that makes sense. I feel like there's a lot of detail within the chest area, and then she always does like hand gestures and things like that. I feel like that's very indicative of her style. I think she also tends to go with a lot of romance, for lack of a better word, in her illustrations, especially with characters that are romantically involved. And really nothing screams romance like lace. So I like these lace pieces from the same show. She also tends to age up her characters style-wise in a lot of the illustrations. So I'm not really shying away from some of the more mature designs here. I was also thinking about Chanel-inspired looks, the kind of preppy style that came back within the past couple of years. And as such, I am going to reference that Machino show. I know, I'm cliche. I feel like I've talked about this at least twice. Sue me. Believe it or not, I have not actually read the Sailor Moon manga, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of these outfits could be used in the manga itself as some of the girls' everyday outfits along the everyday style of Mars or Venus. Like, I know that the anime had some very iconic 90s fashion moments, and I feel like this goes along the same lines of what some of the girls were wearing. Maybe even Jupiter, because she likes to show her feminine side, so I don't know. I also really like this show in particular because of the pastels and the ultra girly motifs. It just reminds me of magical girls in general, and I feel like Usagi in particular would wear this kind of color palette, so I felt obligated to include it. For some of the more airy fashion illustrations, I really like these dresses from Susan Feng, Spring-Summer 2022. Yeah, I just really like the details and the flower-like textures. I feel like they work well with Jupiter's personality. She likes flowers, flower arranging. And, you know, the airiness really reminds me of Princess Serenity's dress, the kind of wing like structure that's in the back. I also think it would be really cool to see Chibiusa in some of the like shorter sack-like dresses as like a mother-daughter thing. That's always fun. And lastly, as a mishmash of romance and whimsy, I was looking at Rodarte. Specifically, I like these dresses from Spring-Summer 2018. I feel like these could match any of the girls' styles. I also feel like Mars especially could wear something like this. In comparison to the other inner senshi, she has more of a style that I would align with like Mercury or Pluto. So I definitely think that these black, more structured dresses work well for her and her personality especially. And like the fiery kind of stuff can go with red flowers, the leather, etc. And this is an aside. I feel like these Rodarte looks from fall-winter 2020 feel very much like what they wore in the 90s anime at times, which is funny. Okay, so as I'm editing this, I had a few more ideas, mostly because New York Fashion Week just happened, and I looked through some designers' repertoires again. Looking at Simone Rasha, I really like this kind of structured pink dress / suit, actually for either Uranus or Neptune. I think it's a more elevated way to show their personal style, which I think is really what the illustrations are about. I also like this leather jacket kind of thing. It kind of reminds me of something that Mars wore in the anime, and I do think that even though it's like maybe slightly too girly for her, I think that it would work in one of the fashion illustrations. I was also looking at the latest Selkie, and I kind of wanted to stay away from it just because I feel like it's a no-brainer, but I don't know, I really liked it, so this I think works as a really good counterpart for the Palladium dress, just in the way that it kind of falls. I also really liked this blue, almost like sleepwear kind of inspired outfit. I really just like the shrug on the shoulders. I feel like that really matches with a lot of the more sleepwear inspired things that we see the senshi wearing. And then just like in general, how cute would it be to see Chibiusa in one of these big puffy things? Like, love that. So let's move on to the villains. I feel like their costumes were shown more in the anime than in the art books, which makes sense because it's a little bit easier to put a villain in a very dramatic, for lack of a better term, costumey look than a bunch of high school and middle schoolers. So coming from the same Rodarte show, I really love this iridescent hooded robe dress. I thought it might look cool on Queen Beryl, but I also realized as I was like looking up villains, there's literally a character called the Wise Man or Wiseman who wears a robe like this. And that robe might be inspired by a Terry Mugler look. So, I don't know. In general, I'm kind of obsessed with this show. I feel like a lot of these looks give like romantic supervillain. I especially like anything that Queen Beryl could wear. I feel like she scared me as a child. We definitely want to give her something cool to wear. I was also looking at menswear that nephrite, jadeite, kunzite. Did I say jadeite? Zoisite. Could wear. They're all gems. Their costumes were inspired by Mugler as well. I'm not super well versed in menswear, but one of my favorite shows ever is Takeo Kikuchi's Fall-Winter 2016 line. In general, I like the silhouettes he's made, the big, boxy kind of style that I think was very popular in the 90s, maybe early 2000s. But since the Heavenly Kings costumes are mostly based on like military wear, I think the Mugler pieces were Soviet Union inspired. I like the idea of sticking to a more military-esque theme, but also adding a bit of preppiness that I feel like the Heavenly Kings kind of embodied in the anime. I don't know, they always had an air of snobbery that to me, at least. I was also looking for armor, like the Spectre Sisters and Sailor Galaxia wears. I was looking at Balmain, but I feel like that show is a little too futuristic. Actually, looking at this again, I definitely think these could work for Birdie. Maybe some of them could work for Galaxia, because I feel like she is slightly more futuristic. I really like this Jean-Paul Gaultier Fall-Winter 2012 look. Also this from 2010. I feel like This motif comes up a lot in his shows, and it's definitely a good place to draw some inspiration from. So yeah, short and sweet. I'm not an artist, so I'm not going to illustrate any of this. But, if you'd like to. Yeah, let me know what you think. I tried to stay away from their more everyday style, just because there's so much potential in that. I'd be here for hours. And it largely just depends on trends and whims. Like, a lot of what the girls wore in the anime was like what was popular in the 80s and 90s. Thanks for spending time with me. I'll catch you next time.